My daughter stood in my kitchen, staring at the suitcase I had spent 2 hours packing with trembling hands. She did not even blink when she told me I was banned from the vacation I had secretly financed for 6 years. She expected tears, but at 67, I was done crying. I smiled and whispered a single sentence that would destroy her perfect little life in less than 48 hours. My name is Dolores Hart. I have lived in the quiet, manicured suburbs of Silver Ridge, Colorado, for exactly 6 years. At 67 years old, I have learned that invisibility is a superpower, though most people treat it like a disease. I stood in the center of my kitchen, the stainless steel appliances humming a low, expensive tune. On the granite island, my vintage leather suitcase lay open. I was carefully folding a floral caftan, imagining the warm breeze of Florida against my skin. I checked the clock on the microwave. It was 7 o'clock in the evening. The summer sun was still painting the sky in hues of violent orange and bruised purple. I was packing for Ocean Crest. It was supposed to be a family retreat, a 3-generation getaway. I had convinced myself that this was a reward for the thousands of hours of unpaid labor I had poured into my daughter's life. The front door opened without a warning. No knock, no greeting. Brooke walked in, the heels of her designer shoes clicking sharply against the hardwood floor. At 38 years old, my daughter looked like a walking advertisement for aggressive success. She wore a cream-colored pantsuit that was tailored to within an inch of its life. Her hair was pulled back so tight it looked painful. Behind her trailed Chase, her husband. He was a man permanently attached to his smartphone, his thumb scrolling frantically as if the secrets of the universe were hidden in his notifications. "Mum, are you still packing?" Brooke asked. It was not a question. It was an accusation. She tossed her keys onto the counter, narrowly missing my suitcase. Chase leaned against the refrigerator, not making eye contact. "I am almost done," I said, smoothing out a wrinkle in my dress. "I just need to listen." Brooke cut me off, holding up a hand. Her nails were painted a stark, bloodless white. Chase and I were talking in the car. We need to discuss the concept of this trip. Ocean Crest is, well, it is a very specific environment. She took a bottle of sparkling water from my fridge without asking. It is going to be a very high-energy crowd. Mum, investors, influencers, a lot of late nights. Honestly, it is not really a family trip anymore. It is a networking event. I need my space. I need to project a certain image. I stopped folding. My hands hovered over the suitcase. Brooke took a sip of water and delivered the blow with the casual indifference of a CEO firing a janitor. "Mum, I think it is best that you do not go. Actually, I am banning you from this vacation. You make people uncomfortable. You complain about the noise. You just kill the vibe." The room went silent. For a few seconds, I felt physically frozen. I looked at my daughter's face, the face I used to wash, the face I had kissed 1,000 times, and I saw nothing but cold calculation. 6 years of babysitting her children, 6 years of cooking her dinner parties so she could take the credit, 6 years of being her servant. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. But then, my eyes shifted to Chase. He was not looking at Brooke. He was looking at the floor, wiping sweat from his upper lip. He looked terrified. And then I knew. This was not about my age. This was not about the vibe or her Instagram aesthetic. This was about the emails I had seen on their laptop 3 weeks ago. This was about the resort booking. This was about the money. A strange calm washed over me. It was cold and sharp, like a blade. I slowly closed the lid of my suitcase. I snapped the latches shut. Click, click. I looked up and smiled. It was a soft smile, the kind a mother gives a child who has just made a terrible mistake. "That is fascinating, Brooke," I said, my voice steady. "Truly. Don't start with the guilt trip." "Mum?" Brooke sighed, rolling her eyes. "It is already decided." "Oh, I am not guilt-tripping you," I said. "I just want to be clear. You are banning me." "Yes," she snapped. "I am banning you." "Great," I whispered, leaning forward slightly. "If I am banned, then the vacation is cancelled too. Let us see who is shocked first." Brooke let out a short, incredulous laugh. "You are delusional. Go watch your shows, Mum. We leave in 2 days." She grabbed her keys and turned to leave, signaling Chase to follow. They walked out the door without looking back, confident in their power, confident that I was just a helpless old woman who would sit at home and weep. I stood alone in the kitchen. I did not weep. I picked up my suitcase and carried it to the hallway. Outside the window, the lights of Silver Ridge were flickering on, one by one. I stared at the city, my mind running through the list of phone numbers I had memorized, the documents I had scanned, and the devastating plan I had been refining for months. They thought the conversation was over. They had no idea it had just begun. 6 years ago, the silence in my house was not peaceful. It was deafening. My husband, Richard, had been gone for only 2 weeks when Brooke sat me down at my old kitchen table, her hands wrapping warmly around mine. She looked like the perfect grieving daughter. Her eyes were soft, and her voice was a soothing balm to my shattered nerves. "Mum, you are overwhelmed," she had said, gently pushing a stack of legal documents toward me. "Dad handled all the finances. You do not need this stress right now. Let's make your accounts joint accounts, just for convenience. That way, I can handle the bills, and you can just grieve." I trusted her. Of course I trusted her. She was my only child. I sold the house I had shared with Richard for 40 years. It was a charming Victorian in a small town. But Brooke insisted I move to Silver Ridge. She said I would be lonely. She said she wanted her children to grow up knowing their grandmother. It sounded like a dream. But the reality shifted the moment the moving truck drove away. I did not become a matriarch. I became a convenience. My new role was undefined but rigid. I was the emergency contact, the chauffeur, the chef, and the janitor. Brooke did not ask me to help. She deployed me. I remember the first Super Bowl party they hosted after I moved. There were 40 people in their living room. Brooke wore a pristine jersey and held a glass of white wine, laughing with her friends. I spent 6 hours in the kitchen, refilling trays of nachos and scrubbing buffalo sauce off the counters. When she introduced me to her friends, she draped an arm around my shoulder and beamed. "This is my mum. Dolores. Isn't she adorable? She is just such a traditional housewife. She loves taking care of us." I forced a smile, wiping my wet hands on my apron. I felt less like a mother and more like a prop. Chase changed too. In the beginning, he would ask politely if I could watch the kids. Slowly, the question marks disappeared from his requests. "Mom, could you pick up the dry cleaning on your way over?" became his standard greeting. He stopped looking me in the eye when he handed me his errands list. I was just part of the infrastructure, like the dishwasher or the smart thermostat. I tried to push back once or twice. I told Brooke I was tired. I told her my back hurt. She looked at me with a practiced expression of concern, using the vocabulary she picked up from her self-help podcasts. "Mum, you need to stay active." She lectured me while checking her smartwatch. "Service is a love language. Helping us gives you purpose. It is good for your mental wellness to feel needed. You do not want to just rot in that condo. Do you?" The cruelty was subtle, wrapped in the guise of modern positivity. While I watched her children for 10 hours straight, Brooke posted photos of herself at a yoga retreat or having brunch with her girlfriends, captioning them with hashtags about self-care and balance. When I caught the flu last winter, I thought things might change. I lay in bed, shivering, unable to drive. Brooke did not come over. She sent a delivery driver with a cup of lukewarm soup and a text message. "Hope the soup helps. By the way, if you are feeling up to it by 5 o'clock, could you still prep the lasagna? Chase is bringing a client over for dinner." I cooked the lasagna. I cooked it because I was terrified of the alternative. I was 67 years old, a widow, and entirely alone in a city where I knew no one but them. I convinced myself that this servitude was the price of admission for having a family. Then came the financial suffocation. It started with efficiency. "Mum, you are not tech-savvy," Brooke said one afternoon, taking my credit card out of my wallet. "Online scams are everywhere. You will click the wrong link and lose everything. Let me manage the passwords. Let me keep the physical cards safe. I will give you cash whenever you need it." It felt logical at the time. I was grieving. I was tired. I let her take them. 3 months ago, I saw a brochure for a senior bus tour to the Grand Canyon. It cost $600. I mentioned it to Brooke during Sunday dinner. She dropped her fork. The noise clattered against the china. "A tour?" she asked, her voice sharp. "Mum, who is going to watch the kids next week? We have that gala. You cannot just leave. We need you. If you leave, we are dead in the water. Besides, can you really afford to throw money away right now?" I stayed home. I realized then that I had let myself drift into the role of an unpaid employee in my own life. I thought I was sacrificing for love, but I was simply being harvested for resources. Yet, even with that realization, I lacked the courage to sever the cord. I was paralyzed by the fear of silence. I would have continued this way until I died, cooking their meals and raising their children. Had I not walked into her kitchen 3 weeks ago and seen that open laptop? That was the moment the sadness evaporated, and the rage began to boil. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and the air was thick with the humid heat of mid-July. I had arrived at Brooke's house 20 minutes early to pick up my grandsons from school, a routine that was etched into my bones like a prayer. The house was empty. On the marble kitchen island, Brooke's laptop sat open, the screen glowing against the dim, natural light. I walked over to place my keys on the counter, intending to start a pot of coffee. That was when the subject line of an email caught my eye. It was bold and demanding. "Urgent closing documents for property in Clearwater Beach." My hand hovered over the coffee maker. Clearwater Beach. Brooke and Chase had been complaining about money for months, saying that inflation was eating them alive. I leaned in closer. The preview text of the email froze the blood in my veins. It read, "We can use Mum's retirement account as backup collateral if the primary loan falls through." I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. I looked around the empty kitchen, feeling like an intruder in a house where I scrubbed the floors. I tapped the trackpad. The screen brightened. I read the thread. It was a conversation between Brooke, Chase, and a real estate broker named Daniels. They were discussing the purchase of a vacation condo at the Ocean Crest Resort. The buyer was listed not as Brooke or Chase, but as an entity called the Hart Family LLC. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. I scrolled down to a PDF attachment labeled Asset Verification with a shaking finger. I clicked it open. There, on the bottom of page 4, was my signature. It was a digital signature, crisp and official. It authorized the use of my retirement portfolio money Richard and I had saved for 40 years as a secured guarantee for their mortgage. I stared at the screen. I had never seen this document. I had never signed this document. I never agreed to this. I whispered to the empty room. I pulled my phone from my pocket. My hands were trembling so badly I almost dropped it. I snapped photos of the email thread. I snapped photos of the PDF. I snapped a photo of the timestamp. I felt sick, a physical nausea that churned in my stomach. This was not just bad behavior. This was theft. I left the house before they returned. I could not look at them. That night, alone in my apartment, I went to the drawer where I kept the mail Brooke told me was junk. It is just technical updates. Mom, she always said, don't worry your pretty head about it. I tore open the envelopes. Bank statements, transaction records, transfer of $2,000 to Hart Family LLC, transfer of $500 to Hart Family LLC, withdrawal for consulting fees. The numbers danced before my eyes. They were bleeding me dry, one transaction at a time. At 9 o'clock the next morning, I walked into my bank branch. I sat across from a young personal banker named Mr. Evans. He typed on his keyboard, his face bathed in the blue light of the monitor. Mrs. Hart, he said, frowning slightly. I see here that, well, the transactions were authorized via your online portal. I do not use the online portal, I said, my voice steady but brittle. I do not even know my password. Mr. Evans turned the screen slightly. The access was granted through a power of attorney document uploaded 6 months ago. It gave full administrative rights to your daughter, Brooke. The memory hit me like a physical slap. 6 months ago. Brooke had brought me a stack of papers before I went in for a minor cataract surgery. It is just standard medical forms. Mum, she had said, handing me a pen, just in case you faint or something, so Chase and I can talk to the doctors. Sign here and here. She had slipped a financial power of attorney into a stack of HIPAA forms. She had tricked me into signing away my autonomy while I was worrying about my eyesight. Is it irreversible? I asked. Mr. Evans looked at me with pity. I hated that look. We can freeze it. But Mrs. Hart, given the amount of money moved and the nature of these transfers. He lowered his voice. You might want to speak to an elder law attorney. This looks like financial exploitation. I walked out of the bank into the blinding morning sun. The noise of the traffic sounded distant, like I was underwater. My daughter did not just want a babysitter. She did not just want a cook. She was building her dream life, her vacation home, her status, her image by dismantling my future. She was cannibalizing my life to feed her own. I sat in my car and looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror. The woman looking back at me was pale, with lines of exhaustion etched around her mouth. But her eyes were different. The softness was gone. If I stay silent, I whispered to the glass. When will they stop? The answer echoed in the silence of the car, louder than any scream. They will never stop. The office of Jordan McCabe was not designed for comfort. It was designed for war, located on the third floor of a brick building in downtown Silver Ridge. The room smelled of old paper and aggressive coffee. Jordan herself was a sharp-edged woman in her 50s, with short, steel-grey hair and eyes that seemed to scan for weakness. She did not offer me a tissue when I laid the photos of the emails and the bank statements on her desk. She simply put on her reading glasses and went to work. Jordan spent 10 minutes reading in silence. The only sound in the room was the ticking of a wall clock and the scratching of her pen against a legal pad. Finally, she took off her glasses and looked at me. Mrs. Hart. I need you to listen to me very carefully, Jordan said, her voice devoid of pity. This is not a misunderstanding. This is a systematic dismantling of your financial identity. Your daughter has not just borrowed money. She has effectively cloned your credit profile. I sat straighter in the chair, gripping my purse. I suspected as much. Jordan tapped the stack of papers. She used the medical power of attorney to access your online banking. Then, she created the Hart Family LLC. It sounds nice, doesn't it? Like a family business. But according to the articles of organization she filed, she is the sole manager. You are just the silent capital partner. If she defaults on the loan for this condo in Florida, the bank does not come after her. They come after your house. They come after your pension. The room felt very cold. I nodded slowly. So, Jordan said, uncapping her pen, we are going to stop the bleeding, right now, for the next 2 hours. We built a fortress around my life. I signed a revocation of the previous power of attorney. We drafted a new, durable power of attorney, designating Jordan's firm as my proxy. We opened a new trust account at a completely different bank, one that Brooke did not even know existed. With a few clicks of a mouse, Jordan helped me transfer $400,000 from my retirement fund into the new, protected account. It was the majority of my savings. I watched the progress bar on the screen load. When it hit 100%, I felt a weight lift off my chest. Now, Jordan said, leaning back, here is the hard part. You are going to want to scream at her. You are going to want to confront her tonight. Do not do it. Why not? I asked. She is stealing from me, because we need to let them dig the hole a little deeper, Jordan replied, a grim smile touching her lips. If you confront her now, she will spin a story. She will cry. She will guilt you. We need irrefutable proof of intent. We need to see who else she is lying to. Let her think the money is still there. Let her make promises to investors based on assets she no longer controls. I understood. I went home that evening and started a logbook. I bought a small black notebook and hid it under my mattress. Every time Brooke mentioned money, I wrote it down. July 14th. Brooke asked for cash for groceries, claimed she forgot her wallet. $200. July 16th. Chase made a phone call in the backyard, telling someone he had secured the capital for the expansion. It was sickening to watch them perform their little play, knowing I was the audience they were trying to fool. But the biggest revelation came 3 days later. Back in Jordan's office, Jordan held up a document we had retrieved from the resort's digital invoicing system. Dolores, look at this, Jordan said. The down payment for the condo purchase is one thing, but look at the booking for this upcoming vacation. The grand suite at Ocean Crest for next week. I looked at the invoice. The reservation was not in Chase's name. It was in mine. The credit card on file was my Visa, the physical card Brooke had kept for safekeeping. She booked the entire vacation in your name, Jordan said, shaking her head. She is telling her friends and investors that she is hosting this luxury getaway. But you are the one legally on the hook for the $20,000 bill. I stared at the paper. This was it. This was the weapon I had been looking for. Jordan, I said, my voice steady. Contact the legal department at Ocean Crest. Tell them that because the booking is in my name, no changes can be made without my voice authorization. No cancellations. No name swaps. Lock it down. Consider it done, Jordan said. We will catch her in a lie she cannot talk her way out of. I left the office and walked into the summer heat. Jordan thought the plan was simply to protect my assets. She did not know the rest of it. She did not know that I intended to let Brooke ban me from the trip. I would let her think she had won. And then, on the very day she arrived at the resort to impress her rich friends, I would pull the rug out from under her so hard the earth would shake. I got into my car and checked the date. The vacation was 1 week away. I had 7 days to perfect my performance. I had 7 days to prepare to break my own heart in order to save my dignity. I stood there in the kitchen, the hum of the refrigerator filling the silence between us. My hands were still damp from wiping down the counter, a reflex born of decades of habit. Inside my head, the plan I had constructed with Jordan was screaming for release. But on the outside, I remained the quiet, submissive mother they expected. I looked at Brooke not as my daughter, but as a stranger who had broken into my home. Brooke paced the floor, her heels clicking a nervous rhythm. She began listing the guest list, ticking names off on her fingers as if she were reciting a prayer to the gods of high society. "Mom, you do not understand the stakes," she said, her voice rising. "Chase's parents are flying in from Texas. Victor Sloan is coming. Do you know who Victor Sloan is? He is a potential angel investor. If he likes the lifestyle, if he likes the vibe, he writes a check for $500,000. And then there are the influencers. 2 girls from TikTok with 3 million followers combined. They expect a luxury experience, a young, vibrant experience." She paused, looking at me with a mixture of pity and annoyance. "And let's be honest, Mom, you complain, you talk about your hip, you ask about the price of everything, you kill the mood. I need to protect my personal brand." It was a fascinating speech. She was banning me from a vacation that was booked in my name, paid for with my credit, to protect a brand built on money she had stolen from me. Chase shifted his weight, looking uncomfortable. He cleared his throat, trying to play the peacemaker while holding the knife behind his back. "Mum, look," he said, his voice soft and oily. "This is more like a networking trip. Strictly business. We will take you somewhere special later, I promise. Maybe next year we can do a road trip." I heard the word promise and almost laughed. It was hollow, rotting from the inside out. I folded the dish towel carefully and placed it on the counter. I looked Brooke in the eye. "That is wonderful," I said. "If I am banned, then the resort is banned too. Let us see who is shocked first." Brooke blinked. She let out a short, sharp laugh. "What are you talking about?" "You are senile. What do you have to do with the resort?" I did not answer her. I reached into my apron pocket and pulled out my phone. I dialed the number for the Ocean Crest concierge desk. I had it saved at the top of my contacts. I put it on speaker, holding the phone out like a shield. Ocean Crest Resort. Guest services. A cheerful voice chirped. Hello, I said, my voice clear and strong. This is Dolores Hart. I have a booking for the Grand Suite starting next Monday. Confirmation number 4599. Brooke's face went pale. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Yes, Mrs. Hart, the receptionist said. We are looking forward to your arrival. There has been a change, I said, my eyes locked on Brooke's terrified face. I need you to freeze that reservation. No one is authorized to check in, modify the booking, or cancel it except for me. Especially not my daughter. Brooke. Understood, ma'am. I have placed a security alert on the file. Will you still be arriving? I might change my plans, I said. I will let you know. Thank you. I hung up. The silence in the kitchen was heavy enough to crush bones. Brooke stared at me, her chest heaving. She realized in that second that the lie she had told her in-laws and investors that she was the wealthy hostess was hanging by a thread that I had just cut. You... Brooke stammered, her face turning a blotchy red. You selfish. How could you? Do you have any idea what you just did? You are ruining my life. I am protecting my assets, I said simply. Brooke stepped closer, her eyes narrowing into slits. If you do this, if you ruin this trip for me, I will cut you off. I mean it. You will never see the kids again. You will die alone in this house. Is that what you want? It was the threat I had feared for 6 years. It was the weapon she had used to keep me compliant, to keep me cooking and cleaning and paying. But as I stood there, I realized the weapon had no ammunition left. She had shown me that our relationship was not a bond of love. It was a hostage situation, and I was done being the hostage. I think you should leave now, I said. Brooke stormed out, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. Chase followed her, looking back at me with wide, panicked eyes before disappearing. I stood alone in the quiet house. I did not cry. I walked to my bedroom and pulled a small, dusty suitcase from the top of the closet. It was not the large bag I had packed for Florida. It was a carry-on, small enough for one person. I packed 3 shirts, a pair of walking shoes, and a book. Then, I sat on the edge of the bed and opened my text messages. I scrolled down to a number I had not used in a decade. It was my old friend, Martha, who lived in a trailer park in the desert of New Mexico. I typed slowly. That visit you promised me 10 years ago. I am accepting the offer. I am coming alone. I hit send. For the first time in 6 years, I breathed. I bought a ticket for the Greyhound bus that cost $45. While Brooke was likely screaming at her expensive luggage in her walk-in closet, I was sitting by a window that rattled every time the bus hit a pothole, watching the Colorado landscape dissolve into the red dust of New Mexico. For the first time in 6 years, I was not worried about whether the roast was burning or if the laundry had been transferred to the dryer. I was just a passenger, and the anonymity tasted sweeter than champagne. Somewhere between the state line and a gas station in the middle of nowhere, my phone buzzed in my lap. It was an automated text message from the bank. Transaction declined. Sun-kissed private charters. Amount $5,000. Reason card reported lost or stolen. I let out a small, dry chuckle that startled the teenager sleeping in the seat next to me. Brooke was trying to book a private yacht for her influencer day in Florida. She was trying to do it with my credit card. The phone rang 3 seconds later. The screen flashed Brooke. I answered, not because I wanted to hear her voice, but because I wanted her to hear mine. Mom. She did not say hello. She screamed. What did you do with the card? I am trying to put down a deposit for the boat, and the machine keeps rejecting it. It says, stolen card. Fix it. Now. I looked out the window at a passing cactus. I cannot fix it. Brooke. I reported that card lost this morning because it was lost. It was in the possession of someone who is not the account holder. Are you insane? Her voice cracked, pitching up an octave. We need this boat. The TikTok girls. They expect a boat content day. You are sabotaging my career. I am just protecting my retirement, I said, my voice calm and steady. You banned me from the vacation. Remember, since I am not going, I certainly do not need a yacht. Mom, you listen to me right now. I hung up. I turned the phone to silent and put it back in my purse. I arrived in Sandhaven, New Mexico, just as the sun was beginning to dip below the horizon. I checked into a place called the Dusty Spur Motel. The room cost $60 a night. It had linoleum floors, a bedspread that looked like it was from 1980, and a smell of lemon furniture polish. It was perfect. I sat on the edge of the bed and listened. There was no television blaring cartoons. There was no Chase asking where his blue tie was. There was no Brooke critiquing my outfit. There was just silence. Back in Silver Ridge, I imagined the scene was far less peaceful. I pictured Brooke on her third glass of wine, screaming at a bank customer service representative, demanding to speak to a manager who could not help her. Chase would be sitting at the kitchen table, his face pale, realizing that the passwords he had saved for the Hart Family LLC accounts no longer worked. I opened my email and sent a short message to Jordan. Step 1 is complete. They are losing their minds because they have lost control. I am safe. I am ready for step 2. Later that evening, while Chase was likely trying to frantically open a new line of credit to cover the yacht deposit and getting rejected because his credit report now showed the massive, hidden liability of the loans Brooke had taken out in my name, I went to a diner down the street. I ordered a cheeseburger and a basket of greasy fries. Brooke never let me eat this. It is bad for your cholesterol, Mum, she would say, while she ate kale salads that cost $20. I took a bite of the burger. It was delicious. While I ate, I placed my phone on the table and played the voicemails Brooke had left over the last 2 hours. It was a fascinating case study in manipulation. The first message was Angry Mom. You are being a child. Unfreeze the card. Do not make me come over there. The second message, 30 minutes later, was Tearful Mom. Please. I am sorry about what I said. The stress is just getting to me. We need this trip. Please call me back. The third message, an hour later, was cold and threatening. If this trip gets ruined, I swear to God, you will regret it. You're going to pay for this humiliation. I wiped a smear of ketchup from my lip. Jordan had called this the cycle of abuse. Abuse, apology, promise, repeat. For 6 years. I had danced to this rhythm. I had let her tears soften me. I had let her threats scare me. But tonight, sitting in a plastic booth in a town where no one knew my name, I decided to step off the dance floor. I did not text back. I did not call. Instead, I opened the browser on my phone and searched for local attractions. I found a guided tour of the Painted Desert and the historic adobe houses scheduled for tomorrow morning. I booked a ticket for one, for the first time in a decade. I was not planning my day around a nap schedule or a soccer practice. I was planning it for Dolores' heart. And as I finished my fries, I realized that revenge was not just about making them pay. It was about taking back the currency they had stolen from me, my time. Most people assume that my decision to freeze the resort booking was a spur-of-the-moment act of spite. They think I snapped in the kitchen that night simply because my feelings were hurt. They are wrong. I did not just cancel a reservation to be difficult. I had been laying the groundwork for a public execution of their lies for over a month. 4 weeks before Brooke banned me from the trip. She had left her tablet unlocked on the dining table. I was clearing away dinner plates while she drank wine on the patio. I tapped the screen and found her Ocean Crest strategy document. It was a guest list. At the top, bolded in red, were 2 names: Victor Sloan, the angel investor Chase was desperate to impress, and Mr. and Mrs. Miller, Chase's parents from Texas. I knew who Victor Sloan was. Chase talked about him constantly as if he were a god who could rain money down on their failing startup. I copied his email address onto a napkin. 2 nights later, I sat at my laptop and typed a message. I did not sound like a senile grandmother. I sounded like the woman who had managed her husband's books for 40 years. Dear Mr. Sloan, I am Dolores Hart, the silent partner in the Hart Family LLC. Before you finalize your capital injection, I believe you should review the actual liquidity of the company, which relies entirely on the unauthorized collateralization of a senior citizen's retirement fund. Victor Sloan was a shark. He smelled blood in the water immediately. He did not reply to me. He contacted Jordan McCabe 3 weeks ago, while Brooke thought I was at a dentist appointment. I was sitting in Jordan's conference room with Victor. He was a man of few words, wearing a suit that cost more than my car. Jordan slid the file across the mahogany table. It showed the transfers. The credit lines opened in my name, and the fact that the assets Brooke claimed to have were actually my pension. Victor read the papers in silence. He did not look angry. He looked interested. So, Victor said, tapping a manicured finger on the ledger. They are pitching me a lifestyle brand based on theft. Essentially, Jordan replied. Mrs. Hart is freezing the accounts next week. We wanted you to know before you wrote a check. Victor stood up and buttoned his jacket. He looked at me with a glint of amusement in his eyes. I am still going to go to Ocean Crest, Victor said. I want to see them pitch this to my face. I want to see how they handle the pressure when the cards start to fall. It will be an educational experience. He was walking into that resort not as an investor, but as an auditor. I did not stop there. I called Margaret and Bill Miller in Texas. They had never liked Brooke. They tolerated her because she was the mother of their grandchildren, but they always suspected she was bleeding. Chase dry. I sent them a packet of documents via overnight mail. I included the credit card statements showing the luxury purchases made while Chase was asking them for loans to cover payroll. Margaret called me the next day. Her voice was trembling with rage. Dolores, she said, her Texas accent thick and sharp. We thought, well, Brooke told us you were senile. She told us she had to manage your money because you were giving it away to televangelists. She told us the house in Silver Ridge was hers. The house is in my name. Margaret, I said softly. And the money she is spending on this vacation? It is my life savings. We are going, Margaret said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. We are going to Florida, and we are going to have a very long conversation with our son. I sat on the bed in my motel room in Sandhaven, watching the dust motes dance in the light of the setting sun. Brooke thought she was punishing me by uninviting me. She thought she was cutting me out of the picture so she could shine. She had no idea that I had turned the Ocean Crest Resort into a courtroom. Every key player in that room already knew the truth, except for her and Chase. They were walking into a trap where every smile from Victor and every question from Margaret would be a test they were destined to fail. I reached into my bag and pulled out a draft of my new will. Jordan and I had finalized it the morning I left. In the old version, everything went to Brooke. In this new version, the language was precise and cold. I had established a conditional trust. If Brooke wanted a single dime of my estate, she would have to submit to financial audits for 5 years. She would have to repay every dollar she had misappropriated with interest. And most importantly, she would have to attend family therapy sessions where my voice, my actual voice, would finally be heard. I took a pen and underlined the final clause. I was not cutting her off out of hatred. I was cutting her off to force her to grow up. The vacation was ruined. Yes. But if my plan worked, her life might actually be saved. I could only imagine the scene at the Denver airport. But knowing my daughter, it was a masterclass in performative happiness. Brooke lightly dragged her 4 designer suitcases through the terminal, her face plastered with a smile that did not quite reach her eyes. She would have been checking her banking app every 3 minutes, praying that the credit limits had magically reset. They had not. By the time the group arrived at the Ocean Crest Resort in Florida, the humidity would have already frizzled her hair and her nerves. The lobby was a cathedral of marble and gold, filled with the scent of white tea and money. Brooke marched up to the front desk, flanked by Chase, his skeptical parents from Texas, and Victor Sloan. The 2 influencers were likely already filming a TikTok in the background, unaware that the content was about to turn into a tragedy. Checking in for the heart party, Brooke announced, slapping her ID on the counter. We have the grand suite and 4 adjoining rooms. The receptionist typed for a moment, then stopped. Her smile vanished. I apologize, Mrs. Hart, the receptionist said, her voice smooth and apologetic. But there is a security hold on this reservation. The account holder, Dolores Hart, has personally requested that the booking remain frozen until she arrives to verify identification. No keys can be issued without her presence. The silence that followed must have been louder than the ocean waves outside. That is ridiculous. Brooke laughed, a high-pitched sound that bordered on hysteria. My mother is confused. She is elderly. I am her power of attorney. Just look at the system. The system shows that the power of attorney was revoked yesterday. The receptionist replied, If you cannot produce the cardholder, I cannot check you in. The room block will be released in 1 hour. Brooke turned around. The influencers had stopped dancing. Chase's parents were exchanging dark looks. Victor Sloan was watching Brooke with the cold curiosity of a scientist observing a lab rat. There must be a misunderstanding, Brooke stammered, sweat beginning to bead on her forehead. Let me make a call. 2,000 miles away, in the dusty, sun-drenched town of Sandhaven, I sat in a small cafe with peeling paint on the walls. I was drinking a cup of black coffee that cost $2. My phone began to buzz on the table. Brooke calling. I took a sip of coffee. I let it ring. Brooke calling. I picked up a sugar packet and read the ingredients. I let it ring. Then the texts started flooding in. Mom. Pick up. They won't let us in. Mom. Victor Sloan is watching me. Stop this insane game right now, please. Please pick up. I am begging you. I will do anything. I turned the phone face down. The power of silence was intoxicating. For 6 years, I had jumped every time she snapped her fingers. Now, she was screaming into the void, and I was simply enjoying my morning. Back in Florida, the humiliation was spiraling. After 40 minutes of Brooke arguing with the manager, Victor Sloan stepped forward. He pulled a black credit card from his wallet. I will cover the rooms for the group, Victor said, his voice level. Consider it a loan, or better yet, consider it a stress test. I want to see how you two handle a crisis. Brooke looked relieved, but Chase looked like he wanted to vomit. He knew that Victor paying the bill meant Victor now owned them. That evening, Victor requested a meeting in one of the private conference rooms. He did not order champagne. He ordered water. He placed a folder on the table, the folder Jordan had given him. We need to have a frank conversation, Victor said. He slid a piece of paper across the glass table toward Chase's parents. Bill? Margaret, did you know that the Hart Family LLC is funded entirely by your son-in-law borrowing against Dolores's retirement pension without her consent? The room exploded. What? Margaret gasped, grabbing the paper. Brooke told us Dolores gave them that money as a gift. She said Dolores was moving into a home. It was a misunderstanding. Brooke cried out, her voice shrill. Mom wanted to help. She gets confused. She forgot she signed those papers. Now she's doing this to spite me because I didn't invite her. Stop it, Victor said. He did not shout, but the command silenced the room. I have the emails. Brooke, I have the digital logs. You forged her signature on the loan documents. That is not a misunderstanding. That is fraud. Chase sat with his head in his hands. His parents were staring at Brooke with pure disgust. The influencers had wisely stayed in the bar. In Sandhaven, I walked along the edge of the desert under a blanket of stars. I could not hear the shouting, but I could feel the vibrations of their world collapsing. I stopped and looked up at the Milky Way. I realized then that I did not want their money. I did not want an apology. I just wanted the truth to stand in the center of the room, naked and undeniable. I wanted Brooke to look in a mirror and see herself, not the victim she pretended to be, but the predator she had become. My phone chimed with a single email notification. It was from Victor Sloan. You were right. The financials are a fiction. We need to speak directly when you return to Silver Ridge. I will not announce my final decision regarding the funding until I hear from you. Enjoy your vacation. Dolores. I smiled, put the phone in my pocket, and walked back to my motel room. The storm had finally broken, and for the first time in a long time, I was not the one getting wet. I returned to Silver Ridge with the dust of the New Mexico desert still clinging to my shoes and a strange, unfamiliar calmness settling in my chest. The house was quiet when I unlocked the door. For the first time in years, the silence did not feel like loneliness. It felt like ownership. The air inside was stale, but it was my air. I walked to the kitchen counter where the mail had piled up like a snowdrift. I ignored the flyers and bills, sifting through the envelopes until I found the one with the bank's logo. I tore it open. The letter was brief and professional. It confirmed that the previous power of attorney had been successfully revoked and that the new trust, under my sole control, was active. I ran my thumb over the embossed seal. It was just a piece of paper, but in that moment, it felt heavier and more protective than a bulletproof vest. Then, I sat down and listened to the voicemails. There were 12 messages from Brooke. I played them in order, watching the sunlight fade across the floorboards. Her voice changed from the high-pitched panic I had ignored in Sandhaven to a low, raspy exhaustion. The trip to Ocean Crest had obviously imploded. "Mum? Are you there?" Brooke's voice crackled through the speaker, thick with unshed tears. "We are driving back. It was a nightmare. Victor left on the second day. He pulled the funding. Mum? He said we were a liability. And Chase's parents. They won't even look at me. They are talking about legal action. I hope you are happy. You betrayed me right when I needed you the most. You chose your money over your own daughter." I listened to the next one. "I know you are there. Mom, I know you are listening. I just want to know why. Why did you have to do it so publicly? We could have fixed this. But you had to humiliate me. You made me look like a criminal." I sat there, sipping a glass of water, analyzing every word. She never said I am sorry I stole from you. She never said I was wrong to forge your signature. Her narrative was consistent. She was the victim of my reaction, not the perpetrator of the action. In Brooke's mind, my refusal to be robbed was an act of aggression. My phone rang. It was Jordan McCabe. "Dolores," Jordan said, her tone professional but gentle. "I have been receiving calls from Chase's lawyer and Victor Sloan. They want clarity. And honestly, we need to finalize the boundaries before Brooke tries to spin this any further. I suggest a meeting. A formal sit-down. All parties present. We lay everything on the table." I hesitated. The mother in me, the one who had bandaged Brooke's scraped knees and cheered at her recitals, wanted to shield her from more pain. I pictured her cornered, stripped of her pretenses, and my heart ached. Is that absolutely necessary?" I asked. "Can't we just send a letter? If we send a letter, she will tear it up and tell everyone you are confused." Jordan replied, "She needs to hear it from you, in front of witnesses. She needs to know the bank is closed. Dolores. Forever." I looked at the calendar on the wall. Next Saturday was circled in red ink. "Okay," I said, my voice hardening. "Let us do it next Saturday. Invite them all. Brooke, Chase, the Millers, Victor, and bring the bank representative." "Saturday?" Jordan asked. "Isn't that your birthday?" "Yes," I said. "It is my 68th birthday. And I think the best gift I can give myself is my life back." I spent the next 3 days preparing the house. I did not cook a banquet. I did not buy balloons. Instead, I went through the living room and removed every trace of Brooke's influence. I took down the abstract art she had hung because she said it looked modern and expensive. I went to the closet and pulled out the large, framed portrait of Richard, my late husband. Brooke had made me take it down 3 years ago. "It is too gloomy." "Mom," she had said, "it makes the house feel like a mausoleum." I hung Richard's picture back above the fireplace, right in the center of the room. I dusted the frame until it shone. He looked down at me, smiling, his eyes kind and firm. I needed him in the room with me. I needed to remember that the money Brooke had been draining was not just numbers. It was the sweat and time of the man who had loved us both. On the evening before the meeting, I stood in the center of the living room, The chairs were arranged in a circle. It looked like a courtroom. I closed my eyes and rehearsed what I would say. I imagined Brooke's face twisted in anger, pleading for sympathy, using every trick she had perfected over the last 6 years. "Brooke," I whispered to the empty air, testing the weight of the words. "Tomorrow, I will not scream. I will not cry. I will tell the truth. Just the truth. Can you handle that?" The house gave no answer, but the face in the portrait seemed to nod. I turned off the light and went to bed, ready to face the fire I had ignited. My 68th birthday was not a celebration with balloons and confetti. It was a reckoning. My living room in Silver Ridge was filled with people, but the air was so thick with tension, it felt hard to breathe. Brooke and Chase sat together on the love seat, looking like 2 children waiting for the principal. Across from them sat Chase's parents, Margaret and Bill, their faces grim. Victor Sloane sat in the armchair, his posture relaxed, but his eyes cold. Next to me was Jordan McCabe, my lawyer, and a representative from the bank named Mr. Z. Evans. I smoothed my skirt and looked at the room. I did not raise my voice. I did not need to. "Thank you all for coming," I said, my voice steady. "I know this is not a party, but we are here to clear the air. For the last 6 years, I have been told that I am confused, that I am too old to understand money, that I am a burden." I looked directly at Brooke. She flinched. "The truth is," I continued, "I trusted my daughter. I signed medical forms because I thought she wanted to take care of me. Instead, those forms were used to access my bank accounts. I found emails discussing how to use my pension to buy a condo in Florida. I found loans taken out in my name for a business I do not own." Brooke opened her mouth to speak, but Jordan held up a hand. Jordan opened a thick binder on the coffee table. "These are the transaction logs," Jordan said, her voice cutting through the room like a knife. "Here is the digital signature used to authorize the transfers. It was time-stamped when Mrs. Hart was at a dental appointment. Here is the formation of the Hart Family LLC, listing Mrs. Hart's assets as collateral, but giving her 0 voting rights. This is not mismanagement. This is fraud." Brooke stood up, her face flushed with panic and rage. "I did it for us," she screamed, her voice cracking. "I did it for the family, Mom. Without me, you would have nothing. You would be rotting in a nursing home. I am building a legacy for your grandchildren." For the first time, no one rushed to comfort her. "Sit down, Brooke," Victor Sloane said. His voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of finality. "I have seen enough. I do not invest in companies that are built on elder abuse. I am pulling my offer. And frankly, I am considering forwarding these files to the district attorney. You used my name to legitimize a theft." Chase turned pale. "Victor, please. We can explain." "There is nothing to explain," Margaret interrupted, looking at her son with tears in her eyes. "We are done. Chase, we will not bail you out again. If you want to stay married to this lifestyle, you will do it on your own salary. No more using us. No more using Dolores." The room fell silent. Brooke looked around, realizing that her audience had left the theatre. "Now," I said, drawing everyone's attention back to me. "Here is how the future is going to work. Jordan has placed all my assets, including this house, into an irrevocable trust. Brooke, you are no longer my power of attorney. You are no longer the executor of my will. If you want to see a single penny of inheritance, You will have to prove for 5 consecutive years that you are financially independent and respectful of my boundaries. I reached into my pocket and placed a key on the table. I have changed the locks, I said. You do not have a key to my home anymore. You will call before you visit. If I say no, you will not come. I am done being your free babysitter. I am done being your caterer. Brooke looked at me, her eyes wide with shock. She looked like she had been slapped. Mom, she whispered, how can you be so cruel? I walked over to her. I looked into the eyes of the child I had raised, the woman who had lost her way. I still love you, Brooke, I said softly, but I do not love the way you use me. I do not love being treated like a credit card with a pulse. If you want a mother, I am here. But if you want a resource, the bank is closed. Brooke burst into tears. She looked at Chase, but he did not move. She looked at Victor, but he looked away. Realizing she had lost control, she grabbed her purse and ran out the front door, sobbing into the night air. Chase sat there for a moment longer, paralyzed, before muttering a quiet apology and following her. Victor and the others shook my hand with respect and quietly let themselves out. An hour later, the house was silent. I was alone. There was a knock on the back door. It was my neighbor, Mrs. Gable. She held a small chocolate cupcake with a single candle on it. I saw the cars leave, she whispered. Happy birthday, Dolores. I took the cupcake. I sat in my favorite chair, the one facing the window. I lit the candle. I watched the flame dance for a moment, thinking about the last 6 years of noise and demands. I took a deep breath and blew it out. I opened my laptop. The screen glowed in the dim room. I opened the search bar and typed a single sentence with a smile that felt brand new. Solo vacation for women over 60. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would be thrilled to hear where you are tuning in from. So please leave a comment below, sharing your location and your thoughts on Dolores's journey. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to Grandma's Family Diary, like this video, and hit the hype button to help this story reach even more people.